Hi, I'm Rafe Sagarin. I'm going to be talking about what we can learn from nature about being safe in our world, which is full of risk. And it's going to be a short synopsis based on my book, Learning from the Octopus, How Secrets from Nature Can Help Us Fight Terrorist Attacks, Natural Disasters, and Disease. Now, the reason that nature is a good thing to look at when we're trying to figure out how to keep ourselves secure is that nature has been doing it for 3.5 billion years. There are millions of examples from nature about how to keep yourself secure in a dangerous world. And natural organisms have the exact same problem that we have in society, which is that risk is ever present and it's almost completely unpredictable. I like to say that a fish doesn't try to turn a shark into a vegetarian. A fish will do everything it can to avoid that shark, but it understands implicitly that there is risk in the environment. And what's interesting is when you look across this 3.5 billion year history of life on Earth, you find some commonalities and some surprising things. One of the most important things is that the way nature deals with this risk is that it does not plan or predict or try to make a perfect response to this risk. And if you need any evidence of that, just look at this fish, the mola mola, the ocean sunfish. If you were ordered to plan a perfect fish, you would never make something that looked like this ungainly fish. And yet, this has been one of the most successful fishes on Earth. It's the largest bony fish. It's been around for millions of years. And the reason is because it solves problems in its environment. It doesn't worry about being perfect. In the same way that we often hear on documentaries that a great white shark is a perfect predator. But it's not really a perfect predator. It'd be more perfect if it had laser beam eyes or something like that. But it doesn't. But it does a really good job at solving the problems of being a predator in its environment. Now, how all these organisms have survived and thrived without planning, without predicting, without trying to be perfect, is that they're all adaptable. Now, we hear a lot of people these days talking about, oh, we need to be more adaptable. We hear business people talking about that. We hear security planners talking about that. First responders saying we need to be more adaptable. But people don't really understand what adaptable is or how it's done. But nature has a good template for that. So when we look at nature, we can actually break down this idea of adaptability and look at how nature is adaptable. And I'm going to talk briefly about 4 basic traits of adaptable systems and what we see. The first and most important thing is that almost all organisms that have been successful on Earth have a decentralized organization where they give a lot of power to a bunch of independent agents to look at the environment, understand the challenges, and respond to them. And we can see that in an octopus's skin. An octopus can glide over a coral reef and instantly change color and shape to match that reef. It doesn't do it by the central brain telling each arm what color to change, but rather it has millions of nerve cells on the skin that are each independently responding to what is around them, and they're responding, giving the whole octopus this camouflage overall. Our immune system works in the same way. We have a bunch of cells running around our body, identifying pathogens and responding them without a lot of back and forth to a central brain. Now, this decentralized organization also brings with it an ability to have a diversity of responses. And what we get in nature as a result is we get what we call creative redundancy in problem solving. Now, there's plenty of just plain old redundancy in nature. For example, the centipede has many, many legs. They all essentially do the same things. Now, a centipede is a fine organism. It's been around a long time. Hasn't really diversified in the same way that its cousins, the beetles, have. Now, there's a story that the biologist J.B.S. Haldane was once asked, "What do all your studies of nature tell you about the Creator?" And he replied, "Well, the Creator must have an inordinate fondness for beetles." And that's really true when you look at the world. You see beetles everywhere, and they've diversified everywhere. And what you see is that they've taken all those parts and created a lot of different ways to solve problems. Some of their appendages have become wings, some have become horns and spines, some have become devices for shooting chemical weapons, legs for walking. So they've used redundancy in a creative way to solve problems and a diversity of problems, which is what comes up in an unpredictable world. Importantly, we see that all organisms use symbiosis or partnerships to greatly expand their natural adaptability. There is no organism on Earth that doesn't create some sort of symbiosis with another organism. And what's interesting here is that often these symbioses are between organisms that you would think would have nothing to do with one another. Like this tiny cleaner wrasse fish that actually goes into the mouth of a much larger fish that could easily eat it up and cleans out its teeth. It provides this service. And when this wrasse is cleaning this fish, it not only creates a partnership between these two fish, but that fish has been shown to be much less aggressive to the other fish on that immediate reef. So there are emergent benefits that come from these symbiotic relationships. And importantly, symbiotic relationships in many cases in nature arose out of relationships that were previously conflictual. So they created a situation where benefits accrued out of a situation that was previously antagonistic. Finally, there's a feedback cycle from all this adaptability to create new adaptable organisms. This is the natural selection in nature, and it's essentially a learning process in nature. And what's important is that nature learns from success. It certainly learns from failure, but the most important learning in nature is learning from success. Every organism on Earth is an example of learning from the success of its ancestors. And too often nowadays we hear how important learning from failure is. But learning from failure only gets you prepared for the last problem. It doesn't create a process by which you can continue to grow and create new structures and new ways of adapting to the future, like organisms in nature do. Now we can take these basic ideas of adaptability and look at how well we're doing in society in terms of, are we organized in a decentralized manner? Are we using symbiotic partnerships? And in my book, Learning from the Octopus, I look at examples where we're not being very adaptable in how we respond to threats in our environment, and examples where we're doing a great job and there are things that we could emulate. In fact, even our most unadaptable structures right now that we think about, large corporations, huge bureaucracies, can be converted into adaptable systems with just a few easy steps. Essentially, we start out a cascade of adaptability by switching what we do from a process which is fairly common now, where a small group of experts give an order to everyone else to follow. If we switch that to where we start issuing challenges that everyone else can respond to and try to solve problems that are issued just as organisms in nature do, then we create a system that begins the process of adaptability and starts moving through all those different steps of adaptability. And in my book, I give examples of how this is already being done and ideas of how we can do it, whether we're talking about the business world, whether we're talking about homeland security, counterinsurgency, cybersecurity. All of these areas where there's uncertain risk in the environment are areas that are ripe for looking at nature and learning how to be adaptable. Thank you.